tucked away in the corner of Nottinghamshire, in a beautiful valley, Beauvale, amongst woodland surrounding the country of my heart, is the ruin of an old Carthusian monastery, Beauvale Priory. It has great historic and ecclesiastical significance, being the home of the very first English martyrs sentenced to death by Henry VIII. A few miles away from this site, at a place called Hilltop, a suburb of Eastwood, is a church that carries a very strong connection with this priory. The parish priest, Canon Newman, tells the story of the Church of Our Lady and the Beauvale Martyrs, and makes special reference to a new hymn inspired by this connection.
So welcome to Our Lady of Good Counsel Church here in Eastwood, and here we are in our chapel, our Martyrs Chapel as we call it, and I'm standing in front of this fantastic altar stone, 500 years old. A little history of where this came from. The stone was found actually with a lot of milk churns standing on it, and when somebody came across it, they thought, sure, that's an altar, because if you look carefully, there are 5 consecration crosses carved in to the stone. It's the altar stone from Beauvale Priory. It's only 2 miles away from here, and 2 miles from here in Beauvale we have the monastery, the ruins of the monastery, the Carthusian monastery, where John Horton and Robert Lawrence were priors. A really important part of our parish community. In fact, this church, Our Lady of Good Counsel, is part of 3 churches together forming the parish of Our Lady and the Beauvale Martyrs. Let me tell you about this fantastic painting, an original oil painting at the back of our altar. It was painted by Don Pedro Subercaso. He was a Benedictine monk, and he painted it in celebration of the 400th anniversary of the martyrdom of Saints John Horton, Robert Lawrence and Augustine Webster. And you'll see them in the painting here. They're the 3 dressed in their traditional cream-coloured Carthusian habits. John Horton was once prior of Beauvale, here in this parish. He left to become prior of the Charterhouse in London. Robert Lawrence then became prior of Beauvale. And the 3rd monk is Augustine Webster, and he was prior of Axholme in Lincolnshire. The 3 of them went to London to speak to King Henry VIII, who had asked them to sign the Act of Supremacy in order for him to be acknowledged as the head of the Catholic Church in England. They couldn't sign that because their loyalty was to the Pope and to Rome, and their punishment to be executed. So this is painted as though it were, from the artist's point of view, on the 4th of May, 1535. And in the backdrop, you'll see the Tower of London. The 3 monks had just come out of there, having been imprisoned, and they were to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. So they were taken to Tyburn, they were hanged until they were nearly dead, taken down from the gallows, drawn, and then their bodies quartered, distributed around 4 different parts of the country. And the interesting story of this is that when they were drawn, John Horton was given his heart in his hand, and his final prayer was, "O Lord, what would you do with my heart?" It's a beautiful moment, but an incredible moment to imagine. But even then, with that grace with which they were filled, they were able to give their lives, as they had done throughout their ministry as Carthusian monks. They were able to give their lives to the Lord. Every year, on the Sunday closest to the 4th of May, we have a wonderful pilgrimage to the site of the Beauvale ruins, the site of the monastery. And our bishop attends, and I think last year we had in excess of 200 people who gathered to celebrate the lives of our Beauvale saints, St. John Horton and St. Robert Lawrence. And it's always a lovely occasion when people come together to pray on the site. And in fact, 2 years ago, a friend of mine preached, Deacon Anthony Sullivan, and he said something that really stayed with me. He referred to the place as a thin place, a place where God touches humanity. And it really inspired me. I'd never heard of that before. And I was able to go back and reflect on it, and I was talking to Alan Wilson about this. And he said, well, why don't you write a poem? Why don't you write some words that reflect how you were inspired by these martyrs, and particularly that Anthony said. And so I did. I wrote the lyrics for this wonderful song that Alan has composed the music for. And for me it's beautiful because it really highlights the life of John Horton and the life of Robert Lawrence, two really important saints, not just locally, but saints of the church, recognised throughout the world. And I wanted to home in on their importance in some of the words that I've used. So at the end of each of the verses, there's a refrain that really focuses in on their lives and what they did, how they were able to stand up filled with grace. It says this, and filled with grace and holy love, they journey to their death. They journey to their death. Very appropriate, I think, to remember the grace by which they were able to stand up for what they believe, the truth of what they believe. And even as John Horton was going to his death, that beautiful psalm that he prayed quietly to himself, be thou my rock of refuge, Lord, to you my spirit I commend, your gift of love upon me send. It's a perfect prayer for someone who is facing his death, for love of his faith and for love of Jesus.
And so the correlation between the Church of Our Lady, with its very special Martyrs Chapel, and Beauvale Priory itself, is a bonding link to grow even stronger. Late night services in the ruins in the Eastwood Festival complement the annual pilgrimage, and walking around the site is pure inspiration. The whole place conveys the atmosphere of love, prayer, and the mysticism that Father Paul referred to, and the sacrifice given by those first martyrs expressed now in this affirming hymn of hope.